Hello everyone, Mark III Ford Mondeo day today. This particular Mondeo has just failed its MOT test. Namely, on the driver's rear metal brake pipe is corroded to excess. And I've got the lovely task of replacing it. And I'm definitely not looking forward to it. It's not one of my favourite jobs, we'll say that. But what I'm going to do, because you can replace these brake pipes like in situ, but it's a struggle, and I've done them before and it's like I can't even be bothered. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to drop the subframe off the car, because I reckon it's probably quicker to take the subframe off, replace the brake pipe, rather than trying to struggle. And as I go through this, I'll explain the reason why I'm going to take the subframe off. And obviously there are lots of cars you have to take a lot off to get to brake pipes. They're never the easiest of things to replace. The other things this car has actually failed on is the passenger front coil spring broken, and one of the rear wheel bearings are noisy. Obviously if the wheel bearing was in a really bad state, I'd show it to you, but it's not. It's only slightly rumbling, so it's not really worth bothering about, but I'll go through it quickly. I won't bother too much about the spring, because there must be a million people showing you how to replace the spring on a Mark III Mondeo. But I'll go through this brake pipe, because otherwise if you get a failure in one of these cars and you have to replace that brake pipe, you could find yourself for flipping ages struggling like hell. And it's not just that. When you make the new brake pipe, because the old brake pipe is in so many angles you have to bend it in, you're never going to fit it up there properly and it's going to look a mess. So I reckon with the subframe off, I can make a new brake pipe up. I can bend it in all the correct shape so it will fit on perfectly and it will look like a professional job, hopefully. Anyway, let's get on with it. So here it is, 2003 Ford Potato. I've already taken the wheels off. The wheel bearing I'll do later. I would show you the wheel bearing if it was really bad, but it's not that bad, it's just a little bit noisy. If it was breaking up like some of them can be and the wheel was about to fall off, it'd be a bit more interesting, but there's nothing to see there really. But here's going to be the tricky bit. This brake pipe, it runs from the driver's rear brake hose. It goes above the subframe, and just up there in the middle of the subframe you can see that pipe. It is absolutely rotten as hell, so that's not, I shouldn't think that's far off bursting. So, and it actually runs down here by the side of the fuel tank on the driver's side where it connects on. You can replace these brake pipes on the car like this, but it's a pain in the ass. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to take the subframe off, which isn't that much trouble to be honest with you. It's like 4 bolts and a few bolts that hold the stabiliser links on, bars on. So I shall drop the subframe off and then I'll be able to replace that brake pipe nice and easily. I'm going to have to drop the exhaust down because it's quite close to the subframe. So what will help here is a bit of silicone spray in the old mounting rubbers. Then I can pull them rubbers out and I'll probably hang that exhaust down with some cable ties or a bungee strap. There we go. Actually, I'll just let that rest on a block of wood. You've only got to remove the rear one, that bush there that's actually on the subframe, and there's one more rubber down by the side of the fuel tank. The rest of them you can leave in place. Next step here, your ABS sensors, they're going to have to come off. So you have to push the little tab down and then pull the sensor off. Now you've got an 18mm bolt on your rear trailing arm. That's that off. And 2 15mm bolts holding these swinging arms on. So we shall whack them out. There. The anti-roll bar, 15mm nut. You're probably best getting a wire brush and giving it a real good clean up first, because I'm telling you, they can be on really tight and you might end up having to cut them nuts off if you're not careful. Once you've cleaned them up, definitely put a bit of freeing oil on them. Lucky, that one come off well easy. And now finally we've got 4 15mm bolts, 2 either side, which is the last bolts holding our subframe on. That's off. Come on, you can do it. We can get the socket on. There we go. A little bit more. Yeah, lovely. Yeah! It's actually not that heavy. Right, so here it is. This is our brake pipe in question. Surprisingly, where it comes off the brake hose, it's actually quite good. As it sweeps around, not too much to worry about. But just here, right in the centre of where the subframe meets, it's yeah, it's pretty rotten there. And in that rubber piece, that's not too bad. Then come further around, right on the bend. Yeah, that's pretty shitty there. That's like, that could probably burst at any time, you never know. And then it will come round to the join just there, by the side of the fuel tank. Not the easiest of places to get to, but once the subframe's obviously out of the way, I've got a lot more room. And as you can see, can you imagine trying to fit a new brake pipe up here and having to make all them bends in it and trying to slide the brake pipe round all the twists and turns? It'd be like a bloody joke. So I think I've done the best thing possible here and removed that subframe. And for what it takes, it's like it's off in 10 minutes flat. So it's no big deal. Anyway, I'm going to try and tackle undoing these pipes now. 11mm brake nut size. Now I've got a spanner here, a proper brake pipe spanner that actually kind of wraps itself around the nut, because as you know, brake pipes don't like coming undone at the best of bloody times. So I'm going to see if this crack's undone. And I'm holding the bracket with some pliers because the bracket tends to bend. Nope, that's the pliers come off the bracket. Oh, do you know what? That's undone. Holy cow, it's undone. You know, quite often, if I wanted to save this brake pipe, I can guarantee that the union would be stuck to the pipe and it would twist the pipe up and destroy it. So I'd have to replace the pipe anyway. But because I'm flinging the pipe away, it's undone, as good as gold. So I'll, come on, get off, I'll carry on undoing this now. And there's my spanners on the brake pipe union here by the side of the tank, which does happen to be the more rusty one, luckily, because the other one behind it's nice and clean, which is good. So I'll crack these off. These ones normally come undone quite easily. So I'll crack these off, and then I'll pull the brake pipe out of all the little clips that it goes into. You've got to be careful with them plastic clips, because over time they get very brittle and they can just snap. So if they all snap, it's not going to be sort of like held very well. So anyway, I'll get this off now. And so that we don't have brake fluid dripping all over the floor or on your head, one of the two, I've got a little union here with a bit of brake pipe in it that I've crushed at the end. So I just nip that onto the brake pipe. So that way, you know, the fluid's not going to keep dripping all over the place. Just to show you here how flipping awkward this particular brake pipe is, the actual fuel filler neck runs down along here, and the brake pipe goes on the other side of this filler neck, well, filler pipe. So I've literally loosened, removed 2 screws that hold the filler pipe onto the chassis. That way I can pull this down a bit, just enough so I can actually slide the brake pipe past this bracket. So it's a bit hard to show you one-handed with the phone, but you kind of get what I'm trying to say there. Now I've pulled that brake pipe out, there's also a pipe clipped in, fuel pipe clipped in up there, you've got to pull off, and then you can pull your brake pipe down and then remove it. It's as awkward as bloody hell. So, but we're off. There it is. Now I can make a new one. So there we go, 1 new reel of copper tubing, 2 unions, and a pair of pliers to bend the brake pipe. What I do here, so we can get this new pipe the right length of this one, because this one's in so many angles, I'll put the old one up against the new pipe, like so, at the very end, and then I'll move it round like that, and hold my thumb just there, then twist it round again, like that, put my thumb there again, and carry on until I get to the end of the pipe. That way I'll know I'm going to get this pipe pretty much the same length as this one. And before I even think about bending the brake pipe into shape, I'll put the unions on, and I'm going to flare the ends first. So there's our first end flared. Now our unions are done, I can use this special pair of pliers. This will actually, you can put that in there like that, and the actual brake pipe will bend around these curves in the pliers. You see? They've got little curves in them, you can bend the pipes around. Pretty cool. Right, it ain't great, but yeah, I'll pop this on the car now, and hope it don't leak. We are just about all fitted in place, just tightening up that last brake pipe, and where's my torch? We can now fit it into all the clips, and that brake pipe runs around. I've got the rubber on it to stop it chafing against the chassis, and then it goes underneath and around to the union down by the side of the tank. And just before I bung that subframe back on, I was going to put a bit of brake cleaner all over the brake fluid that was dripped. Yeah, we don't want any dripping brake fluid. For when I do the pressure test after I've bled the brakes, I want to make sure everything's nice and dry. As boring as this is, I'm just going to have a quick closer look at this pipe. I reckon this is the worst part of the pipe just here. So I'll give that a little... I don't have a corrosion assessment tool here, but a wire brush would be good enough. Give that a bit of a clean. It don't look great. You can actually see the pipe's a lot thinner anyway than what it should be. Yeah. Even if you cleaned it up, it's easily a third, I'd say a good third, like worn. So I guess the only thing to do now is give it the crack test. I know it's steel, but how easily will it break? Oh, it's still quite flexible, I have to say. Let me just move that over a bit. Ooh, crusty. Yeah, it's quite a strong pipe. Sometimes if they're really rotten, you'd only have to bend them a little bit and they'll just crack and start leaking. But I've bent that backwards and forwards and it hasn't, so despite how thin it is, it's still got a bit of strength in it. There it goes. Now it's gone. But yeah, definitely the guy who MOT this was right to fail it, because there really isn't much thickness left of that. Obviously, having this transmission stand is nice and easy to pump this subframe back up into position. If you're doing it on your back with trolley jacks, I mean, it'll work just as well. Just jack it up so far, get all your bolts in, don't tighten nothing up until all the bolts are in, thread tight, and then you can whack them all up. And obviously don't use an air gun on all these subframe bolts until you've actually screwed them in properly with a ratchet by hand, because you'll be surprised, although most of the threads are quite coarse, you'll be amazed how these actual threads can get cross-threaded quite easily. So make sure they're in properly first. Okay, we're getting there. So they're all like on the threads properly. but not tightened up. The ABS wire I'll pop on in a minute, and the anti-roll bar links I've got to whack up. But also this subframe, before I tighten these 415mm bolts, you see the hole at the back. I've got these pins. You can use a broom handle if you like, but them pins go through there and they go into the chassis. There's a hole in the chassis like that. You can see that better. So that will line your subframe up, because if you don't get the subframe lined up, you might end up with tyre wear. So have them pins in there, or your broom handle, whatever, before you tighten these bolts up. Now this is where it could get interesting. Will the old brake bleed nipple on the caliper undo? Nice. Sometimes they don't, you know. Then you have to replace the flipping caliper. Right, I'll put my bleed pipe on there. Okay, I've topped up the brake fluid reservoir so we don't run low. And all I'm going to do here is the old-fashioned way. I've got a pipe coming off the brake bleed nipple going into a bottle. There's fluid in there, but I think these have got a one-way valve anyway, so the fluid can't run back and air can't get in. So now I shall just, if I can bloody jump up into the car, yeah, I shall just press the brake pedal up and down nice and slowly. That's down to the floor. Then I'll let it back up, give it a few seconds and press it down again. Now it's actually, I can feel the pedal actually getting a lot harder. That's back up again. And I'll do this about 4 or 5 times and that'll be about it. So that's our last time to the floor. Now back up. All the fluid is come through that pipe. And now if I take that pipe off, you'll see that's dripping out now. Now I can just tighten our union back up. There. Okay, we're ready. I'm going to start the engine up and put my foot hard on the foot brake at the same time. I can feel the servo resistance as my foot sinks a little bit. Now I'm going to pump that brake pedal, give it a number of pumps, and I'm going to hold my foot really hard on the brake pedal, putting a lot of pressure down. I'm just going to hold it like that, so I want to know if we've got any leaks from any of the unions we've just created. So what we're looking at, the bleed nipple that we've just disturbed, make sure that's not leaking, that's fine. The brake union up here where it goes into our hose, that's perfectly fine. And last but least, under here, where our union is up there, no leaks there either. Excellent. Because if we had anything dripping, we'd have a bit of a problem, wouldn't we? Because it does happen sometimes, you can get a flaw in the brake pipe, or the union or the flaring tool hasn't done it correctly, or whoever's made the joint hasn't made a proper joint, and sometimes these things can leak. But no, this is all good. So now all I've got to do is put the wheel back on and we're done. Now that our brakes are all bled, I shall just top up the brake fluid reservoir and we're just about done. This wheel bearing, you can hear that, it's definitely a bit rough. The only thing I really want to show here is how to get these bolts out. This is what you're liable to come across. They're going to be corroded to hell. There's going to be all shit inside there where it's a Torx 50 socket that's supposed to go in there. So if you can get something in there, like the end of a screwdriver, give it a good working around, try and get any crap out of it first, Then we're going to put our Torx 50 socket through the hole in the hub flange and get it there. And then I'm going to whack it in with a hammer. Give it a few belts. And this is where it's a bit dodgy. We've got to try and undo it. Do not use an air gun to undo these, because if you strip that Torx thread inside there, then you're going to have problems getting this bolt out. Just get your bar and try to put steady pressure on it. You can even sort of like kind of pulse the bar to try and crack it free. But if you feel it's not going to go, then don't go too far with it. You might even be able to put a bit of heat on that sometimes if you have to. I'm going to see if it undoes that. Oh, it's gone. Lucky. No, I'm not lucky. It didn't go. That was my socket that just went. Yeah, see, look at that. Yeah, you see, these are the kind of hazards you can come across on these. Now I've got the problem of getting this Torx bit out. I think to be fair, my Torx bit has been used enough times that it's stressed a lot, so it was probably due to break. So that's it. That's my bloody Torx bit broken. So not to worry, I have another one, which will go again. Right, let's see if we have any better luck with this one. Yep, it's gone. Oh, phew. Yeah, I don't think, to be fair, that was actually a fault of the bolt being that tight. It was more the fact that I've used this enough times on the air gun, and I reckon it's weakened it. Because I use this socket, this Torx bit, to undo flywheel bolts on the taxis. So I use the air gun to whack them in and out. So after a while, these tend to shatter anyway. So I think it's just about due to go. Now all our 4 bolts are out. They all come out okay, actually, even though they were quite rusty. Now I just need to get this off. So first of all, the ABS sensor at the back needs to be disconnected. Then you just need to give this a little bit of a tap. There we go, 1 hub off. And that, I'll tell you what, to feel it, it's dog rough. Yeah, that would have got a lot worse. So just as well it failed the MOT now. Right, a nice new APEC wheel bearing. They don't give you the bolts with it. Flipping stingy gits. But yeah, so I'll have to use the shitty old bolts to put it back together. Right, let's not forget the tin shield. And by the way, that bearing only goes in one way, with the ABS sensor facing downwards. There's like a chamfer at the top here. So anyway, and the bottom bit of the bearing's flat. So anyway, you can tell by the actual markings on the back plate. So we'll pop that in there like so. I'll get this one in hand tight, and that will be good then we can slot all the others in. So I'm just going to tighten all these 4 bolts down, nice and tight. If you wanted to torque these bolts up, they're 70 Newton meters. And of course, after a little job like that, you've always got to sweep up the pile of bloody rust. Right, now our wheel bearing is done, our brake pipe is done. That leaves 1 broken coil spring. And yeah, it's safe to say that's definitely broken. Lucky though, because sometimes when these springs break, they can get down by the side of the tyre and gouge the inside of the tyre wall, even put a hole in it sometimes. Anyway, I said I won't show this because it's all been done so many times before, but I'll get the leg off anyway, and see how bad it is to change the spring. Well, I've got this spring taken off the shock absorber, and yeah, that's the little rubber boot that goes on it. So I think the old piece of spring has long gone, and judging by the state of it, so it's so bright out here I can't even see properly, but it's very, very rusty, so I should think that's been broken for a little while. Mind you, I don't think you'd have even noticed it, the amount that's broke. If you've ever had to replace a spring, front spring that is, on a Mk3 Mondeo, you'll probably know using the little, you know, wind up compressors is not a good idea. You need a proper one like this, a proper compressor, because these springs, they really do have to be compressed a hell of a lot to actually fit the bloody shock absorber back through there. So I'm going to bang this up as far as I can get it, and hopefully we'll be able to fit it all back together. There is a serious shed load of compression on that spring. If that was to go, I think it'd go through the bloody roof, or it will take my head off at the same time. So I'm going to be a little bit on the careful side, sliding this in, to say the least. And that will slot through there. Just enough. Where's the nut? Quick, get it on, quick, get it on. Now, all we've got to do is tighten up our top 18mm nut. Yeah! And when I release the spring compressor, don't forget to put the actual spring next to the little tab on the shock absorber. There was one other thing I was going to show, but this top mount doesn't have it on it for some reason. But a genuine top mount, it would have a line across here with like a little arrow either side, and that should be in line with the actual hub flange like that. It makes it easier when you slide it back into the shock absorber turret, when you're refitting it obviously. The reason I take the entire shock absorber leg completely off the car is because the shocker goes into the hub quite a distance, and if you've got to take that pinch bolt out and lever that hub downwards, you're putting a lot of strain on the bottom arm, which doesn't really move very far anyway, and also the drive shaft, and sometimes you can actually pop the drive shaft out of the flipping inner joint, especially on these cars you can. So I just find for the extra few nuts and bolts you've got to undo, it makes life a whole lot easier just to take the whole bloody leg off rather than trying to struggle with lever bars and hammers trying to knock that hub off. Anyway, I'm going to bung all this back together. That's it, job done. One coil spring fitted, one wheel bearing, and that bloody stupid brake pipe. So now, I will point out here, these Mk3 Mondeos, they do tend to rot the brake pipes out. Many of them, when they get a few years, and they're all bloody very old now, aren't they? Because this is like a 2003 model. That's the original pipe, so it ain't done flipping bad. But I've had newer ones of these that can be completely rot. Normally the pipes, the driver's front brake pipe will rot out. The two pipes that come all the way down the length of the car, they get corroded. And obviously the one I've just changed, and the one that goes over to the passenger side, which also will need a subframe coming off. So yeah. It's funny because I've never had to replace a brake pipe on a Mk4 Mondeo for some reason. Must be a better system, but these ones, they're terrible. We've been forever changing pipes on them. But anyway, now you know what to do to make it easy for yourself, because you see how many bends there were in that pipe. Bit of a bloody nightmare. Anyway, that's it. So, till the next one. Thanks for watching. See you again. Adios. Well, that just leaves one thing left to do, doesn't it? Put this and this where it belongs, in the trash can. See ya.